Good morning, everyone. Welcome to church this morning, First Parish in Concord. I'm here in my apartment in Cambridge where the sky is blue and it is starting to really feel like late fall. It is a little chilly out there this morning. My name is Jade Sylvan. I am the ministerial intern and I am so happy to welcome you to church this morning. Howard Dana, Reverend Howard Dana, our senior minister, is here as well.
Good morning, everybody. A beautiful fall day. Nice to be in church with you.
We also have Dawn Van Patten, who is the Assistant Director of Religious Education.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you.
And we have Adrienne Betancourt, who is our Social Action Manager.
I am delighted to be with you this morning.
Beth Norton is our Director of Music Ministry.
Great to be with you all, to see your names popping up in the chat on this crisp fall morning.
Reverend Amy Friedman, our Minister of Religious Education.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you for worship today.
And of course, Reverend Liz Weber, who is our Minister for Pastoral Care.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to service today.
And on keys, we have Eric Heineke.
Morning, friends. It's great to be with you on this beautiful morning.
Also joining us is Doug Hardy. Got to unmute yourself, Doug. I'm sure,
Good
yes.
Sunday morning, everyone.
And Sarah Ritchie is helping us out with the tech.
Good morning. It's good to be with you today.
Thank you, everyone. So it is the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower arriving in the US. And we're also coming up on the Thanksgiving holiday, which a lot of us in the United States were taught a certain narrative about growing up. But today we're going to explore different ways of looking at that story. And so our call to worship this morning is from a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong by James W. Lowen. And the call to worship is actually two parts. So there'll be a second quote here at the end. But the first part of it is, Native Americans are not and must not be props in a sort of theme park of the past, where we go to have a good time and see exotic cultures. What we have done to the peoples who were living in North America is, according to anthropologist Sol Tax, our original sin. And then the second part of this call to worship is a quote from Frederick Douglass, who said, "He is a lover of his country who rebukes and does not excuse its sins." Now I invite you to grab a chalice or a candle. As Unitarian Universalists, we light a chalice to signify the beginning of our worship together. And so we will light the chalice and say the chalice lighting response. O flame of our faith, open our hearts and fill our bodies and souls with persistent strength. Enliven our spirits and engage us deeply in this life of ours, this sacred, essential moment now. Got it finally there at the end. Thank you.
Good morning. This morning, we're going to start off with a slightly different kind of hymn. 400 years ago, when the religious separatists that we know as the Pilgrims came to these shores, they brought with them a psalm book, a book of psalms that had been produced by a separatist minister in Holland named Henry Ainsworth. Thus it was called the Ainsworth Psalter. And they, in their practice, they would sing psalms together from this book in the metrical versions that Henry Ainsworth wrote. And they would sing them in a way that was call and response, because not everybody had the book, not everyone had the words in front of them. So a leader of the church, probably a deacon, would stand and would line out, sing each line of the psalm, and the congregation would respond. And the tune of this psalm will be familiar to you. It's known as Old Hundredth because it was written 100 years before Henry Ainsworth to be sung with the words to the 100th Psalm. And this morning we will be singing the 100th Psalm according to Henry Ainsworth. And our deacon will be Doug Hardy. So Doug will line up the psalm and you and I will respond after he sings it. And the words, I believe, have been put in the chat if that will help you. Deacon Doug?
Shout to Jehovah, all the earth.
Shout to Jehovah, all the earth.
Serve ye Jehovah with gladness.
Serve ye Jehovah with gladness.
Before him come with singing mirth.
Before him come with singing mirth.
Know that Jehovah he God is.
Know that Jehovah he God is.
It's he who made us and not we.
It's he who made us and not we.
His folk and sheep of his feeding.
His folk and sheep of his feeding.
Oh, with confession enter ye.
Oh, with confession enter ye.
His gates, his courtyards with praising.
His gates, his courtyards with praising.
Confess to him, bless ye his name.
Confess to him, bless ye his name.
Because Jehovah he good is.
Because Jehovah he good is.
His mercy ever is the same.
His mercy ever is the same.
And his faith unto all ages.
And his faith unto all ages.
Hello, everyone. This is the time of year, the edge of the holiday season, when we talk about guest at your table. Some of you may know about guest at your table, and for some of you, it might be new. Guest at Your Table is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's annual program to raise awareness and money for key human rights issues. It's been an important part of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's programming and Unitarian Universalist congregations for 45 years. It's a long time. If we were together at First Parish, we would hand out boxes for you to take home and collect money. And if we could be together in December, we would invite you to bring those full boxes back, and we would send the money that we collected to the service committee. This year, things are a little different. This year, there are instructions online for building your own box at home and instructions for how we can each safely and individually send our contributions to the service committee. I built this box from the directions online. It looked like this. You print it out, you build the box. Mine is a little small. I might need to find something bigger to collect my money. But what I like about this box is that it has pictures of this year's 4 guests from all different parts of the world. Guest at Your Table asks you to imagine that these people were coming to your house for a meal, and that over that meal, they would tell you their story. This year, the program for the year is the theme for the program is the meaning of home. And each guest has a story about the work they're doing to protect their homes and their communities. I want to tell you a little bit about each of them. On the service committee website, you can find out more about each person. You can see pictures and videos. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about their courageous work. So at the top of the box, this is Adela. She's a human rights advocate in Guatemala. There's much poverty where Adela lives, and many people migrate or leave their homes because there's not enough food and there aren't enough jobs. Adela works to make conditions better and more fair so that people don't need to leave, and her agency also supports people that have left and are returning home. The agency helps them deal with the challenges that they face when they come back. Another one of the guests here, this is Mark, and he is a scientist, a climate researcher who grew up in the Marshall Islands, which is a small group of islands in the Pacific Ocean. The rising sea levels there that are caused by climate change leave many of the homes, research is showing that many of the homes might be uninhabitable by 2050. The sea levels could rise that much that people might need to leave. So Mark works with people in the community to collect data on flooding and safe drinking water. And by involving communities and people there, they can develop protections to help them stay in their homes and also make a plan for leaving if necessary. This is Chief Cherelle. She is the leader of an Indian tribe in southern coastal Louisiana. Her people can trace their ancestors to the very first people who lived in that area. Just like Mark, climate change and other human activity is threatening her community. It's damaged the land and made it harder for her people to hunt and to farm and to live life the way they used to. So Chief Cherelle is fighting for the tribe's people and their lands. And the last person I want to tell you about, Suja. Suja is from Burma, also known as Myanmar in Southeast Asia, next to China and Thailand and India. And there are many, many ethnic groups in Burma. And Suja is from a group called the Rohingya. The Rohingya are treated very, very unfairly in Burma. And when Suja was 17, he wasn't allowed to finish school. He protested and he was arrested. And although he was released, he was afraid for his life and he left his home. Many Rohingya have left their homes because they were scared to stay. So Suja moved to Malaysia, and there he created an organization to help other refugees. The organization provides needed services and is a center where refugees can practice their cultural traditions, and they can be in community even when they are far from their home. So through Guests at Our Table, our congregation and other Unitarian Universalist congregations can help the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee support the work of this year's featured guests. So check out the Guests at Your Table website, or if you're subscribed to the weekly RE Family Resource, check there for more information about how you can take part in the program this year. We can help our guests, Adela, Mark, Chief Cherelle, and Suja, fight for fairness, respect, and justice. And together, we can make a better world.
Please join me in singing a song about giving, receiving, and sharing, ways we can make a better world together. We'll sing it 3 times. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Dawn, for that message about guest at your table, a good thing to support this time of year. Our reading this morning is also from the book, Lies My Teacher Told Me. It's a provocative title, but it's a good read. And part of the reason I was so struck by this book is that I really love history. And I don't look at history as being something to perpetuate the past. I look at history more as our way to figure out the things that we've done that we don't want to repeat. That in fact, my view of history is that the past is the past, but the past is also the prologue. And we humans have free will, and we have agency, and we have in fact power. And some of us have more power than others. And history is a way to find out how power flows, and who is given it and who is denied it, and how to make it more equitable. So the reading I have this morning, I want you to go back and think about 50 years ago. So 50 years ago in 1970, it was the 350th anniversary of the landing of the Mayflower. And a lot has changed in 350 years, but a lot hasn't changed in a lot has changed in 50 years, but a lot has not changed in 50 years. So 50 years ago in 1970, the Massachusetts Department of Commerce asked the Wampanoags to select a speaker to mark the 350th anniversary of the Pilgrims' Landing. And Frank James from that tribe was selected. But first, he had to show a copy of his speech to the white people in charge of the ceremony. When they saw what he had written, they would not allow him to read it. I want to read you just a bit of what he wrote 50 years ago that was not allowed to be heard. Frank James said, "Today is a time of celebrating for you, but it is not a time of celebrating for me. It is with heavy heart that I look back upon what happened to my people. The Pilgrims had hardly explored the shores of Cape Cod 4 days before they had robbed the graves of my ancestors and stolen their corn and beans. Massasoit, the great leader of the Wampanoag, knew these facts, yet he and his people welcomed and befriended the settlers, little knowing that before 50 years were to pass, the Wampanoags and other Indians living near the settlers would be killed by their guns or dead from diseases that we caught from them. Although our way of life is almost gone and our language almost extinct, we, the Wampanoags, still walk the lands of Massachusetts. What has happened cannot be changed, but today we work toward a better America, a more Indian America, where people and nature once again are important." So we're living through a pandemic. You and I are living through something that is really hard right now. We're living through a time in which we have to wear masks when we go outside, a time where we can't do a lot of the things that we'd like to do, gathering in person for Sunday worship, singing, even going home for Thanksgiving or being with grandparents. We are living through a very, very difficult time right now. And it is just a tiny taste of what other folks have lived through. Now, if some people had their way in the United States, we would just let herd immunity take care of this. We'd just let whoever got sick get sick, and most of us would survive and some of us would die. And I think that's actually a fairly cruel way of dealing with a pandemic like COVID-19. The epidemiologists say that if we let herd immunity work, that only 1% of the US population would die. And that doesn't seem like that many, right? Just 1% of us. What that means is that 3.5 million Americans would die of COVID-19 if we did nothing. That means that we would all know people in our own immediate family who died of this illness or were very, very ill from it. Imagine then if there was an illness that killed 95% of the people who caught it. We're talking about smallpox. We're talking about those European diseases that arrived on our shores in those boats before the Mayflower, but had a huge impact on that landing. Imagine what it would have been like to have been living on these shores, to be in your tribe and in your village, to have health and land and a way to make a living and a community to be with and religious rituals to observe. And then 95% of the people you knew were killed by a mysterious disease that showed up. It is estimated that in 1492, there were 100 million people living in the Americas. That was more than were living in Europe. But what also happened was when the Europeans started to arrive, they brought with them the diseases that the folks in the Western Hemisphere had no immunity to. So things like smallpox and other European diseases just swept through tribes and killed people indiscriminately. So by the time that the Pilgrims show up with the Mayflower, and they land there first at Provincetown on Cape Cod, and then they make their way over to an Indian village called Pawtuxet. When they landed, they didn't find many people because a terrible epidemic had swept through in the years before and had decimated the tribes. The Indian village of Pawtuxet was essentially empty. There had been fields that were cleared. There were graves that had been dug, but folks had mostly abandoned that place. So the founding story of our country is not one of a journey into a wilderness. It's not the fact, our story gets almost everything wrong. They were not lost. There was not a storm at sea. They came over knowing exactly where they were going. There were maps of the area. People had been visiting it for decades. And what our ancestors, our religious ancestors found was a place where a disease had wiped out most of the inhabitants, and they took that as providence. Now, I know that there was not the same understanding of diseases then as there is now. The Native Americans did not understand why they were dying off in droves, and to a large degree, the Pilgrims didn't quite understand either. In fact, some of the Puritan ministers gave thanks to God for this disease because in their mind, it clearly was affecting the people who were not saved. And they took it as a sign of great providence from God that the natives were not a force to be reckoned with. A fact that we are coming to terms with, mostly in the Unitarian Universalist Association and in the United Church of Christ, is that most, if not all, of those standing order churches, those first 45 or 50 churches that were founded during the Puritan migration, were founded on what was left of Indian villages. And Concord is Concord is the same thing. Founded where land had been cleared, where a good fishing stream was, founded where there was the remnants of people having been there before. And so in coming to terms with this, we have to acknowledge that yes, we were some of the first people to found our country, the country that became known as the United States, but we were not the first people here, and that we owe an enormous debt of gratitude to the people who were here and who, because they befriended us, because they did not attack us in large numbers, because they were so decimated, allowed our own religious ancestors to make a home here, to even survive that first cold winter. Now, I suppose like you, I grew up with the story of Squanto. As a boy, Squanto was a hero of mine. Here was this Native American man who took pity on these settlers who show up late in the year with bad provisions and no idea even how to farm. Squanto, the hero who saves the pilgrims, for whom there would not be the first Thanksgiving as we know it. In reading up on Squanto, though, he is an amazing man, and there was no secret why he could communicate. The truth is, Squanto had crossed the Atlantic Ocean at least 6 times. He'd lived in Spain, he had lived in England. Squanto had walked the streets of London, something most of the Puritans themselves had never done. He'd lived in Nova Scotia and he'd lived in Massachusetts. He spoke English well and he spoke rudimentary Spanish. And so when our ancestors show up late in the year and they don't know how they're going to make it through the winter, they don't know how they're going to grow crops in this new land, and there is no going back, there is Squanto, who knows how to talk to them, who gives them advice, who doesn't let them all die there on the cold New England shore, but befriends them, sees them human to human, and takes an interest in them. I'm wondering if this year, this Thanksgiving, we might not see the Indians of our country differently. I'm wondering if we might not retell this story differently, knowing some more of the facts. And I'm also wondering if we might not just have more eyes to see Native people among us, to see the Wampanoags who still live in this state of ours, in this Commonwealth, who are still fighting for some of their rights, and to be grateful for them, not to want to turn back history, because you can't do that. There's just no doing that. But to go forward with a fuller history, a more complex history, a history that doesn't make us out to be the heroes, that we're not always the good guys, that we sometimes get it wrong. In fact, some would say that we often get it wrong. But to just look at the American story with more honesty and more integrity, more patience, less reactivity. How might we be different to one another, to the people in our country, to the people around the world, if we could look at a true and honest history of ourselves and to be grateful for those who helped us when we were helpless, so that we might help others in return. In a moment, a question will appear on your screen. I'd love to have you chat briefly and tell us, what complicated stories are you wrestling with? Put your response there in the chat. Tell us, what complicated stories are you wrestling with? I will lift up just a few of these and you can read them on your own in the chat. And just a reminder that you can always go back up into the chat and read things you might have missed. So stories you are wrestling with the Old Testament, absolutely. With the myth of a happy nuclear family around a table, with grandparents' overt racism, for the reasons behind the divisions in our country, from poverty and climate change, family history, racism, the divisions in our country, relatives who don't see the dangers around us, inherited health issues from our families, accepting imperfection, how we keep repeating the past, the legacy of slavery, the story of Custer, the lies of class mobility in the United States. What is the true story of Concord's land acquisition? So many more. Some of you are writing books here and I can't read them all. Family racism I grew up with, that I cannot be with my family. Personal versus society transformation. Wildfires and materialistic goods. So many more. Take a chance to look at these when you've got a chance in the chat. There's lots of good stuff in there. Next, we're going to hear a song, another psalm. This is the 23rd Psalm. This is a recording of our choir singing it. Please enjoy it.
Song.
Each week we come together in a time of prayer and meditation in our service. And this week, I invite you to just stay in this moment because we're going to switch up a little bit and do our meditation part first and share the prayers that you all have been carrying this week in a moment. So I want to stay with this question of complicated stories, but I invite us first to sing together. Let's sing Spirit of Life. I invite you into a time of meditation. You don't have to sit any particular way, but it might be nice to sit up a little straighter. You don't have to breathe any particular way. Just let your breath come as it comes. You can have your eyes closed, or if they're open, just let your gaze soften a little bit. Put your hands somewhere that feels grounding, maybe on your heart or resting in your lap. And just let your breath come as it comes. Take a story and hold it in your hands. Maybe the story that you shared in the chat just now, or maybe the story that Howard shared in our sermon. Just pick one story and hold it in your hands. Let the old version of that story come to your heart and mind. The version that you grew up with, the version you used to believe. What do you notice in your body as you think about that old story? And now let the newer fuller version of that story come into your heart and mind? The complicated story. What do you notice in your body as you think about this newer, fuller story? How do you respond to nuance and complication? What feelings arise for you with this fuller story? Sadness, overwhelm, relief, defensiveness, anger, joy, wholeness, how does it feel to know how complicated life really is? Know that whatever feelings you have are normal. It's just part of being human here on this earth together. Part of living in a country where we have told only one story, allowed only one story for a long time, and are living into more complicated versions of our story. Living into more and more stories of who we are. Just like our spiritual ancestors, we sometimes mess up, and that is okay. When we can tell the whole story, we can become more accountable. We can move into more honest relationship with our past, with each other in the present. We can live better into the future. Know that all of who you are is sacred, that even with all of the complications, you are loved. Let's sit together for a few moments of silence. And as we begin to come back, I invite you to open your eyes if they were closed and stretch, if that would feel good. And now is the time that we will hold one another as a community. And I share these pastoral concerns and milestones and gratitudes on behalf of you. You'll see the fuller stories in the chat right now, but all of us hold Amy R. and her family, Rhoda, and Petra in our hearts and prayers today. And Rhoda and Petra are holding us in their hearts today. Who else is on your mind? I invite you to share their name in the chat.
For our Share the Plate, I'm so pleased to welcome Lisa Monk, the National Alliance for Mental Illness in Our Own Voice presenter, to share her own personal story.
Hello, my name is Lisa. I am a 42-year-old pre-kindergarten teacher. I have my degree in elementary and special education. I love music and animals. I live with bipolar disorder type 2, social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and attention deficit disorder. I was introduced to NAMI, Massachusetts 6 years ago when I attended an In Our Own Voice presentation. I knew then that I had to be a volunteer and become a member of NAMI. My first NAMI training was to be a peer-to-peer mentor. Shortly after, I was trained as an In Our Own Voice presenter and later as a connection group facilitator. After joining NAMI, I knew I was not alone. I was surrounded by warriors who wake up every day to fight a battle within themselves. As an In Our Own Voice presenter, I share my story with others in hopes of ending the discrimination and stigma surrounding mental illness and to give hope to others who live with a mental health condition. I don't want one other person to feel the pain and shame that I felt. I speak at many different venues, including colleges, community centers, community events, police trainings, family groups, faith-based organizations, and more. It brings me joy knowing that my pain and suffering was not for nothing, that I can use it to help others. I never thought in a million years that I would be able to stand up in front of others and tell about my darkest days and how I found my way through them. I give NAMI credit for showing me my strength and my voice that I never knew I had. NAMI gave me confidence and a new purpose in life. Thank you for choosing NAMI as part of your Share the Plate.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your story. It is time for our offering, where we invite you to give generously from your heart And our offering is shared always 50-50 with our organization for the Share the Plate program, this month being NAMI Mass. Both NAMI Massachusetts and First Parish, I hope, are places where you can feel able to bring your whole self. And if you're leaning into that and it's hard, know that I welcome you to share more and more of who you are. We take this offering to be able to share our bounty with others and to sustain the good work of this congregation, the good community of this congregation, from our past and far into our future. The instructions for giving by text will appear in the chat. If it's the first time, the program just walks you through automatically, and so you can give by text easily, but you can also give online on the firstparish.org website, or even by mailing a check to the church. We are grateful for all you give. Thank you.
As we begin to close our service, I would like to just tell you how much it means to all of us on the church staff that you come to church. It's a chance for us to connect with you. It's a chance for us to sit in prayer with you and in silence with you, to sing with you. And so it really does us a lot of good to have you be in church. And we know that in this world full of media, there are lots of choices that people have, and we hope that church is giving you something each week that you might not get somewhere else. So know very much how much we appreciate you attending, and we wish we could see each and every one of you and give you nice big hugs or hearty handshakes. As we close our service, there are some opportunities if you'd like to stay online and to see one another. There's the worship sharing circle, and a link to that will appear in the chat soon. It's an opportunity to talk about the themes of the service with some facilitators. So that's a great place to go if you'd like to talk a little bit more about what went on in church today. A more just plain old social option is the coffee hour. And it's always moderated by a standing committee member. And this morning, Jane Barnes is here with us. Jane, say hi from the standing committee and welcome people to the coffee hour, please.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. So the coffee hour is a great way to connect with people in a small group. It's really fun, and I invite you to join us. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. And both of those will finish around 11:30, so you're not going to be stuck in either of them forever. You can go out and enjoy the rest of your day as well. Please pay attention to your email. FP Weekly is the best way that we can communicate with you. We're also on Facebook and we're on YouTube. If for any reason you miss a Sunday morning service, or if you just want to watch one over, you can just go to YouTube, type in First Parish in Concord. That will lead you right to the whole library of them there. We have the family service every Sunday morning, and you're welcome to attend that. And because Zoom commutes are easy, you can easily get from one to the other. And I know that Dawn and Amy and Peter put a lot of energy into the family service, so please check those out. And this morning, I want to give a shout out to Nan Jeffries. Nan Jeffries has been doing Meet the Member each week in FP Weekly. And she's just going down the list and she's just asking you all some basic questions about how you found Unitarian Universalism or how you found First Parish. And I know, as your minister, I have learned a lot about people that I never would have known by simply reading what Nan has compiled. So if you get an email from this strange lady named Nan Jeffries, be kind to her, send it in, and you too might be one of the members that appears in FP Weekly. It has been good to be with you this morning. Let us sing together our closing song. We cannot change history. What has happened has happened. What we can change is today. so that tomorrow those who read the history that we make will thank us. Please join in the first parish benediction, saying, "Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings."